Marhaba to you all. Welcome, dear audience, to today's event, brought to you by Al-Bustan Seeds of Culture. We are privileged to be screening the original and provocative film, CROP, and are delighted to host its co-director, Marouan Omara, in conversation with Joseph Fahim, curator of the film series 10 Years Since Tahrir, of which CROP is a part. I welcome you, Marouan, and welcome you, Joseph, both currently in Egypt. I would like to thank our funders and donors without whose support we would not be positioned to bring you such arts programming. These include foundations, the Ford Foundation, the National Network of Arab American Communities, the Local Initiative Support Corporation, the Samuel F. Fells Fund, and the William Penn Foundation, as well as federal, state, and local government entities, the Philadelphia Council on the Arts, the Philadelphia Cultural Fund, and the U.S. Small Business Administration. I would be remiss not to thank all of the individual donors whose support has long sustained Al-Bustan with care and commitment, including audience members graciously joining us today. We welcome your donations. We also welcome your engagement in conversation with Director Omara by way of questions or comments. We encourage you to join in. And at this point, I will pass on the floor to a brilliant moderator, Joe Fahim.
Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for everybody who have been catching our series. It's a collection of movies that are very close to my heart, that I, especially like after 10 years of Tahrir and the contentious legacy of it, I feel it's more important, especially because I think nobody's really shedding a light on the legacy of the movies that were made during and in the aftermath of the revolution. So, you know, like, I want this more to be of a like discussion more than a Q&A, really. But like the first thing that comes to my mind is how simply, why did you decide to tackle Ahram? Ahram, as everybody have seen the movie must know, was the biggest paper in the country. I think around that time, 2013, when the movie was made, or I think like it made it in 2012, like correct me if I'm wrong. It was really, its popularity was waning. Digital media was coming along, independent newspapers were taking more prominence and were gaining bigger readership. And Haram was really like waning in popularity and influence. And yet it was still like this bastion of like this holy bastion of press that the regime was very adamant on preserving. And I think like afterwards it waned in influence more and more. So I think like for me that the most fascinating thing is you're also like tackling not just the dynamics of working in the biggest, or what used to be the biggest paper in the country, into like more of a meditation or like a study of this dead beast of like, which I feel like it's very close to what the regime was, which is, you know, like this, like this monster that was very ferocious and had a great influence, and its powers at that time of filming and afterwards completely waned. So yeah, the first thing is, why this?
So like, firstly, I want to thank you, Joseph, to program our film among these great other films and other great filmmakers that we are showing our film with them. And thanks for Al-Bustan for hosting us and hosting our film to be part of this program. And it has been a while since I make a talk or a Q&A of CROP now. So I'm happy to do this, and refreshing how things starts, because as you mentioned, like we shoot the film in 2012, July 2012. And I'm not sure if any other films from Egypt in this program, like the year of the release was the same, or maybe before or after. I think maybe we are one of the earliest or the earlier one, I'm not sure. But we were in a moment that like, yeah, I remember before the 2011 revolution, 25th of Jan, I was very much involved in the kind of the movement of the young generation. And I was very much trying to help of moving things in our country. And I remember in 2010, I started to take a kind of a bit more action with the information that I know, which is media. And I started doing short videos for Ahmed al-Baradei, who came to Egypt maybe in late 2009, early 2010, and there was a certain movement around him. And I remember it was me, Muhammad Diab, and Amr Salama was going to Muhammad al-Baradei home, and we were doing for him short videos that was released on internet for 1 year. I remember once me and Amr Salama, and we were with a microbus, and we were like really fearing, is this microbus going back home, or are we going somewhere else that to not be able to go back home? So it was really frightening moment and very fragile moment as well. And for sure, since the 25th of January, I was in the square, and I'm a photographer. I'm educated as a photographer, so I always to take photos. That's my job. I was still in university at that time. But I remember I don't have a single image from the full experience of the revolution. I was very much enjoying to be part of the people, being chatting in the people in the square. And I was thinking always that, like maybe that was later I learned about me through my later films, that maybe always I tried to have a more of a reflection point of view, and sometimes a bit of a distance of the kind of actual event.
By the way, but I also, like, for some strange reason, like you, I never took one single photo of what was happening in Tahrir. I didn't take any footage, and I'm still like not sure why now. And I think like maybe like you, I was just like enjoying being in the moment and being in that, you know, like massive historical event that, yeah, like pictures or anything, it just didn't matter. I didn't even think about it, you know.
Yeah. That was the first impression, that I'm not able to take photos, and I don't know why. Also, I was exactly as you mentioned, but also, and at that time, if you remember, like the Tahrir was the most documented revolution. What happened in the Tahrir Square? The amount of films and the amount of people with cameras, it was an industry happening there. And I was feeling like, okay, like what could I do? What could I add? And when I was reading the post that you do in Facebook announcing the Q&A and the screening, and there were a sentence that I was very much moved and very happy with, that you were saying that the film is still relevant to what's happening nowadays. And that was my motive doing this film 8 years ago with Johanna, that I was very much eager that how I could do a film that people could watch it years after, and it's still relevant, still makes sense, it still reflects some things. As we were not eager to take any pictures, we thought about these people that are kind of the transition between the people on the square and the people back home watching them on the square, the photographers. So our interest started from there, that we need to, these people that there were a very famous interview for Farouk Ibrahim, the private photographer and the main photographer of Anwar al-Sadat, that he did, and it's on YouTube, that he was saying, like, whenever I'm going on the streets of Egypt and I found some garbage in some corner, I knew that I don't have to take this picture. He was saying this because I knew that these pictures will not be published. So why I will take it? I need to be smart. He was saying this. I need to know what I'm taking and what I'm doing from that. So these people at a certain moment of the history of Egypt, they were asked to film what they were always asked not to film and not to photograph. This demonstration that was happening a few years before the revolution in Mahalla, for example, was almost not documented. And now they were asked to go and shoot these people, and they were even messed up that sometimes you need to go to Mustafa Mahmoud to film these supporter to Hosni Mubarak, or you need to go to shoot the people in the square. Sometimes the agenda saying that these are bad people. Some other days they are good people. So they were kind of, and this is their job. So we start everything with this question, like, who control the images, and what images, who decide which images to be published and which images not to be published. And we make a lot of interviews. So we start just doing interviews without any plan of choosing Al-Ahram. I'm trying to go to answering your question, but I'm sorry that I take some time. But so we were always asking this question to all the people: who control the images? Why these images are published or not? And there were no answer. Everyone is dropping the question to the other one. Like the photographer saying the head of department. The head of department say the chairman of the newspaper. The chairman of the newspaper saying Zakaria Azmi, who was kind of the vice president in a way or another. So you never know who controlled these images. Until one of the days we were doing the interview with the head of the photo department of Al-Ahram, who was actually the head of the photo department when they make this very famous picture with Mubarak, Obama, and they swept Mubarak to be in the front.
That was iconic.
Yeah, for sure. So he was very shaking and he was very afraid, and we were just asking him like how this happened. But I remember once we get inside the building, we felt, okay, this is what controls the image. There's a machine. There's a huge machine that controls which images to be published and which images not to be published. It's not actually this very simple, modest guy that his job would just to be the head of the photo department. He is really not part of this game. There is bigger things than this person. So at that moment, we decided, okay, we want to make the film about the photographers, about this machine that is coming from this old time. As you said, like at maybe the time of the revolution, there were more going to the social media and internet and other newspapers, but it was representing for us, this newspaper was representing the whole history of that country, that with all the age and all the years, that coming with a very kind of slow pace of change that is still running until now. So that's why we choose Al-Ahram, trying to reflect on that questions and trying to make a film that could be relevant beyond talking about the revolution, but without shooting the Tahrir Square that we were not able to film at that moment.
Also because the moment passed, I think, like maybe we were thinking.
You know, like at that time, every Friday there were demonstrations. So we could still, I mean, like we shot in 2012. That was like, I remember like the moment we decided to do this film was the moment I was with Johanna and we were together working, and we watched on the TV the massacre of Port Said, the 74 people that died in the football match in Port Said Stadium. That we were just started. That was 1 year exactly after the revolution, with 1 year and 1 week exactly, and things was still very much up and down. But still, for us, was not like, yeah, we need to find a perspective, and the photographer and the newspaper was the perspective that helps us maybe to reflect about what happenings around us, and maybe to step a bit back and trying to analyze it with a bit quiet tone, if we could, as you mentioned about the film, that we were trying to observe it or analyze it, if we can.
There was this brief window that opened up right after the revolution of, window of freedom, where, creators were to a great extent were able to discuss and say things that they were not able to say or discuss before or after. Was this to gain access to Al-Ahram? I feel that before or after, maybe it would have been doable. And was it also difficult, like getting? Was it difficult, like getting the trust of everyone to like simply go and film and do these things? And did they ask like, for footage, like to like sanction the movie or stuff like that?
So yeah, it was a very chaotic moment in the history of Egypt, but also the history of Al-Ahram. I think it's not about the freedom, it's about instability, that no one knows really where the country is hiding to. So once we decide that we will shoot in Al-Ahram, we do a very simple paper asking for a shooting requests. And it took us, I think, like 5 months to get the acceptance that we could film. And even the acceptance was very uncertain, that they say yes, and then they say no, and then they say yes, but you need to pay money. And then it was like 20,000 Egyptian pound per day. And then they say, okay, we make a discount, 5,000 Egyptian pound per day. I mean, like it was
But
really.
clearly they were desperate. If they asked staff for that amount of money, they were desperate.
I mean, like I think they were testing and they were trying to kind of see. They were not able to say no at that moment because they were just fearing that saying no might put them in other problematic things. So they were saying, I think that they were in that kind of uncertain. And I remember also we were shooting the film at the moment. We were inside the Al-Ahram building shooting when they announced that the second round of the presidential election will be between Ahmed Shafiq and Mohammed Morsi. The two, Mohammed Morsi from the Muslim Brotherhood and Ahmed Shafiq from the old regime. We were inside the building at that moment that they announced the first presidential election after the revolution. The short list people are those two. So it was a moment that the country could be going with the Muslim Brotherhood, which happened after, or was able to go back to the old regime. So they were at the moment that, okay, guys, like shoot, but we are really not sure how to do that. And so for sure, I think the timing was very important. And we shoot the entire film, I think, in 3 days. We were very well prepared. So we went to make the interview, and then we asked them that we want to take photographs. So we make as a scouting. So I went with the assistant director and we filmed the entire building in images, in photographs. And then we make a kind of filtration of the rooms and the spaces that we want to film in, because we were not having a lot of money, any money actually. So, and then we film very precisely. We were kind of having a list of 16-hour working, 3 days shooting the scenes, and finish the entire film in 3 shooting days. And I think if we wait like a few months after or a few months earlier, it will not be possible to film it.
What was your impression when you went there? And what did you observe? What startled you the most?
Like what people sometimes struck them in watching the film, that as we struggle a lot to get the paper, but once we get the paper, people inside, they were thinking that we are now representing the chairman, or maybe even bigger than the chairman of the newspaper. They were very much fearing us, that whenever we get in a room and they just see the paper, for them, they need to pretend that we are not exist. So they are doing their work perfectly because they were expecting that this material, the chairman will see it. So they need to work hard and they need to not joke with us, which make our life easy, that we film very smoothly without any question, because they just feeling that there is there were a kind of a lot of how people watching us and ignoring us, but trying also to be professional. So like normal things actually was the most problematic things. Like someone is opening the sandwiches. That was very like, why you are opening the sandwich? Or someone like having breakfast. That's the things that was very problematic. And for sure, with an institution of 16,000 workers, that's a big part of like a governmental worker. Also, that was a big part of the daily routine that we watched there. So these human daily routine, casual Egyptian life, bureaucratic, was very interesting, and for them was like insane why we are interested in these things. So always the conversation around these things was very interesting, and they were kind of, okay, we will let you do it, but we are not sure what's happening there.
We have to talk about the aesthetics of the film. For me, I think like the first time I saw it, I was really struck by how it was complete. I mean, this is the kind of documentaries that me as a critic at that time, which is sort of like at the beginning of the Renaissance of Arab cinema, that like the kind of movies that I was really craving to see, but I wasn't seeing, because most of the documentaries that we were seeing were aesthetically following the same format, which is, you know, like talking heads and interviews, and whereas yours, there's, you know, like a mix of Chantal Akerman, there's a mix of James Benning, fixed images, meditations. It's simply like this voiceover of this guy juxtaposing these images, not one single interview. And the images really drive the entire narrative. So yeah, tell me about it. Were you apprehensive that, you know, that this might not be widely accepted in here, of like people like being designed to see or expect what to see from documentary filmmaking? And the fascinating thing is, this is also like a style that we would see in your subsequent film, A Dream Away, and it's clearly a style that you have adopted, and it's becoming your personal artistic choice. So tell me more about that.
So like, yeah, so as I was mentioning, like I have my bachelor's in photography. So I was always, I think it always my projects, I always care about, and I always take in consideration this quote from the Russian filmmaker Viktor Kuskovsky, when he was saying that for films, he was talking about more documentary films. Story is important, but perception is even more important. So I'm always, whenever I'm doing a film, I'm always thinking about that this tool I'm using, whatever it is, the camera or the mic or the arrangement of the shots or the pace of the edit, that I'm always thinking about how I could find the best perception and how I could find the visual perception that represent what I'm trying to say with the camera, with these tools I'm using. And with this film, I think we were very much trying to shoot the film as if we are seeing it from a point of view sometimes of a photographer. So how this could represent the photographer himself, watching his own space that he works in. But also, I think at that moment it was trying, I think it's also present in the voiceover, this idea that there were a kind of a very unstable moment that we are trying to see the calm around that, or to see, like, yeah, we are not very much eager to go to shoot in the revolution in Tahrir Square. So we are not really behind the chanting. We are trying to look behind the chanting. So for us, I think also the pace was trying to give us this meditative feeling that I think works well in that film. And the voiceover, for example, we never knew about the voice until I think weeks before the premiere, which was a very, I think, like weird story that the film, like since day one, we were very clear. And I remember I told Johanna that we will not see the people who are doing the interviews. We will not see them. That was very clear to me since day one. So, and I was knew that we will watch something. I don't know what it is. We were not sure about even Al-Ahram at that moment. I know that we'll see something, I will hear something, and together they are making the story. And we were searching for, okay, what we will see and what we will listen. We find first what we will see, Al-Ahram. And as I explained, we knew now that this is the sound was much more problematic to us. That, okay, this frames is brilliant and they have a story in themselves, but what is carrying the story audio-wise? Or do we don't need audio at all? At that moment, we were thinking, no, we will need audio. And I remember we were having a very, like 3 of all the interviews we did. This person will talk about the history. This person will talk about the revolution. This person will talk about Sadat. This person will talk about Nasser, and each person with his or her experience. And then we submit the film to Rotterdam, and it got selected by, at that time, the curator was Omar Khalif. And Omar, and then we came up with this idea that, okay, like it was the version which was selected for Rotterdam for the world premiere was conducted of the visuals of Al-Ahram, but with audio of 2 interviews. Yasser Alwan, he's an Egyptian Iraqi photographer, and Maria Gulia, she's an American writer who's she wrote a very important book called Photography in Egypt, which I think it was a Bible for us doing this film. So we make 2 long interviews with them, and that was the voice of the film. But we were feeling, okay, this is delivering information, and we need to go beyond the information. And then before the premiere was few weeks, we came up with this idea that, and that choice make us that we ignore a lot of other great people who tells a lot of interesting small stories, but maybe they were not big enough to be part of the big narrative of the story of the film. So we came up with this, that why not we take this small selection from all the 20 interviews we make, and we wrote them and try to edit them that feels like as a one-person story. And then we asked this actor, Hani Mitinawi, to read it, which was actually really copy-paste from other interviews together. I remember Omar Khurif, he was shocked, surprised at the premiere, because he don't see the film as it is before the premiere time. He was just seeing something completely different. Yes, the same images he used to see, but the story was totally different and the arrangement of the shots was very different. So I think also when you are talking about this idea of different language of making films, we are always, and I think I'm one of these people because I always work with other filmmakers that I'm very happy to collaborate with, to experiment and to try things out and to keep until the last moment trying things and hoping that it would work or not. I think in this film with the visuals, we were really very much trying things differently than what we used to. But I think even in the audio, and I'm happy even that the film in the end looks very simple. You feel like just few shots after each other and one story, but still it works. So I'm also like sometimes to find this simplification with the story is very complicated, and that's with Dream Away that you are referring to was also very important part. Like I think with the new film I'm working on now, The Missing Planet, this idea of architects and how to find something in the architects reflecting the people relationship with the country, with the institution they are part of. In CROP was Al-Ahram newspaper, in Dream Away was the city of Sharm el-Sheikh, and in the new film we are shooting it in different planet, a science fiction film that reflects our reality. So we are even going more crazy. Yeah.
We need to talk about that after. One of the most fascinating aspects of, I mean, I love like how there's, I mean, like on aesthetic level, of course, you know, like I think I just like mentioned how much I love the film for the reasons I mentioned, but also I think it's linked for information, and it documents things that I think has been forgotten now, which is, I think for me, the more startling aspect that is often neglected by the Western narrative, which is the revolution was not born in 2011, that there is a discussion of the 26 workers' movements, and everything that led to the revolution. How do you feel about the movie now that most images about the revolution or the entire revolution now has been deliberately forgotten or being avoided?
And that's the new film. Simply, that's my new film. That's the new film I'm working on. Yeah, it's about this. It's about how all these images are forgotten, about that this event does not exist anymore, which is very shocking, which is very sad, but that's the case, and it's very disturbing to me. As I was just reflecting, 2011 is the year I graduated from the university, so I was just young, interested person in filmmaking and trying to see my country different, and I was very much involved. And seeing how things was moving, I cannot easily forget it. I cannot avoid it. And I'm not an activist, or I'm not a person who is very good in writing. I'm just good with what I'm doing. So this is something that I'm very much moved with, and this is something that I'm working now on, trying to find a way to reflect it. And hopefully maybe in a few years, in a new Q&A with you, Joseph, we could talk about even this more, that how this event is forgot and how I maybe tried. I'm not sure if I will succeed in this, but I will try my best to portray this erasing of our collective memory in Egypt.
We have room for a bunch of questions, so please, if anybody wants to ask us questions, please send your questions now, because we need to wrap up soon. We have one question. For an American audience, what is the most important or salient message you want people here to get to understand from your film?
I don't want to send any messages or to let Americans or Europeans or Egyptian, like I'm not doing it for certain type of audience. I always remember this quote by, I think Spielberg mentioned it and Scorsese mentioned it, that you are the first audience of your film. I think it was very important to me to document this emotion I have, this emotion we have. And I think also the film is open enough that it could simply reflect things that might happen in the US now or a few years before or after or anywhere else. I think this idea of controlling people, manipulating the minds of the crowds or the citizens, and trying to now, even with the social media and all of that, that how even things could be even more controlled, and how things developed. I think this is what I was trying always with this film and with all my films, that I tried to make something which is very much personal, very much rooted in where I came from, but I think it could be related and relevant to any other things. So I don't know what you see in the film, and how it might be related to your background, to your experience. But yeah, there's nothing special or some one message I try to deliver. I hope and I wish if you could write to us what you get out of it, and then I could tell you, I could reflect on that. That would be even better to me.
You know, how many years has it been since you made the movie now? 8, 9 years?
9 years, yes.
9 years. How do you see the transformation of Ahram now? What do you think Ahram has become?
So I mean, like, that's also a very sad story. I mean, like, there is no paper. I knew that they stopped doing the paper edition, but they expect people to make, yes, but they expect, I mean, like, they make it very limited.
The print edition?
They make it very limited. That's what I knew. Very limited.
I honestly had no idea.
But they expect people to subscribe to get a PDF version, something like that. I knew that they are very much struggling with the amount of that there is no any selling they are doing, and there is no any income, there is no any advertising happening. And I think this is with all this, because also the film is not for me about only Al-Ahram. It's about Al-Ahram, Al-Akhbar, Rose Al-Yusuf, Al-Musawwir, Al-Hilal, all the Egyptian newspapers. I was just in Al-Hilal a few weeks ago because I was interested to check their archive. And the guy there from the library, he was saying that they don't make a penny anymore. Things are really in a very sad situation, and they're just going with the money from the tax. So things, I think, is getting very sad, because there's a lot of people who just work and survive based on the salary they get from that. So things are getting worse and worse, even if they are now maybe politically in a better position because they are with the state and so on. But I think business-wise, they are collapsing and in a very sad position.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I honestly, I used to read Al-Ahram because my dad used to get it, because I think our parents used to get the print edition. My father, my late father, was obsessed with checking the obituary, and I think that was a common thing among a lot of parents. But I honestly, I can't remember the last time I, not even like checking the print edition of Ahram, of checking Ahram website. I mean, every now and then I would check like but Ahram in at least like 9 years or something. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's like the same with everybody. Even, yes. First of all, like, I mean, the state of press in Egypt is really bad. I think the worst it's ever been. In the sense that there are no freedom of expression, the state has seized control of all the media, but also like people have simply like stopped reading. less, like independent papers, but state media. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know anybody, even those who are sympathetic with the current administration, who read Al-Ahram. And I feel like it has become more irrelevant than any.
Yeah, things are, the gap is getting bigger. I think it's not even only Ahram, as I was stating, all the other governmental newspapers, but I think even the private newspapers, like there were a very sad image that I see on Facebook, that one of the key person that we interviewed was Hussam Diab, who was the head of the Al-Masri Al-Yawm newspaper, the photo department, who was a great guy actually, and his father was Hassan Diab, the main photographer of Nasser. So this part of the story is actually inspired exactly from Hussam Diab, and he was sharing the picture that they closed the photo department in Al-Masri Al-Yawm, as simple as this. And Al-Masri Al-Yawm, one of the photographers from Al-Masri Al-Yawm is Ahmed Zidan.
I had no idea.
And Ahmed Zidan was the photographer who take, and we interview him, who take this picture, the very famous one, the blue bra picture, the girl that the army people was like showing her blue bra. It's a very famous, iconic picture. And all this department is now not exist. So even I think private newspapers in Egypt now, they are in a very also sad position. And I think also no one is reading them as before.
We have a question, but I think you answered that. Can you talk more about the decision to use a narrator in the film? Which is
I think this. Yeah, I mean, that was also very much of a decision that also elaborated in my next films, in Dream Away, but I think also in 1+1 and El Ziara, that I started doing these films that it was reflecting more of a creative documentaries, more that I'm mixing different film mediums and genre. So sometimes I get a lot of questions. I remember we were in Romania doing one screening, and people was kind of two things. Firstly, they were very much very happy with the song. I mean, like people were saving the song in the credits, Sura. I was like, Sura in Romania, it's getting a trend.
Wow.
Like people was asking me for the song, really. You know, they were really much connected to it. But also we get sometimes question that people really believe that person that is telling the narration, that sometimes they feel irritated or like that we are cheating them, that he's not a real person. Even if we hinted in the very early in the film with mentioning different names of the same person. But I think, yeah, like I also like, I think this way of making the voiceover was not meant to be like this or like to invent that person. There's something also like, as it came very late, and we find that this is the best way to make this film, which later with my films, I never try to categorize myself or categorize what films I'm doing. I'm always eager to find the best way to represent this story, what it's called, fiction, documentary, science fiction. I don't really care. I mix all things and try just to find, okay, this is the best way, if it, at least from my perspective, which sometimes doesn't work for a lot of people. Like Dream Away, I don't know, Joseph, you know, like this film was, there were a lot of conversation around the film that people were thinking that we are cheating and this is not real, and a lot of prizes we don't get because we just make the best decisions for us that we believe at that moment. Yeah.
Joseph, are you there?
Sorry, for a second there, the line was off. I have one final question that I mean, we cannot not ask this, and I think it's a question that I think all our guests are asked, which is 10 years after Tahrir, 10 years after the revolution, how do you see it now? What's your impression of it now?
Yeah, it's very.
And how do you feel? What it means?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for the years 2018, I remember 17, 18, and 19, I was most of the time not in Egypt. And being back in 2020 and 21, and yeah, especially at the moments of the square, the Tahrir Square, and the 25th of Jan, and going on the streets of Egypt and then seeing a huge big banners celebrating the police feast, and seeing because both have the same day, but to see a big banners, paid banners on the main roads saying like 25th of Jan, we are celebrating the police feast, and to see in all the TV channels, the public and the private TV channels, the logo of 25th of Jan celebrating the police feast. It's sometimes drive me crazy, and it put me really sometimes in a very sad moments and very stressed moments. It's more difficult than for sure before, and even more difficult than the time of Mubarak. But I see that the people are really kind of, there is some still, at least that's what I'm doing. I hope others doing that. I'm still having the impression that we could do something as a citizens, and people are still trying to shake the grounds under what's happening from the regime. Even if it's very individual and it's kind of feels like an ant or like a very small thingy that is not very effective. But I knew that this small ant is for the big elephant, could at some moment make him get mad and be in a kind of big drama. I'm not sure if this will happen, but I'm sure that the big elephant is still very afraid of this very small ant. Or at least he's putting a lot of calculation behind it.
Yeah, he wouldn't be going through all of these great lengths to shut down this ant if it didn't see danger. Marouan, thanks a lot. That was great. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks everybody who've been watching our movies. Next week, please tune in for Ahmed Noor's Waves, and we have more. This is not the end. We have more announcement next month. So spread the word, tune in, and thanks again for Al-Bustan for giving us the opportunity to screen these movies that were, very difficult to see these days, and of an event that, as we mentioned, has been deliberately forgotten.
Thank you to our guests. In closing, I'd like to extend our gratitude once again to Joseph and to Marouan, and to express my appreciation for making good sense and elaborating despite having to use terms such as elephants and ants. We do hope that you register for the next film that Joseph mentioned, called Waves, and that'll be screening Friday to Sunday. The screening window will be Friday to Sunday coming. And if you happen to be in Philadelphia, we do hope that you visit Al-Bustan's Hub on Wednesday, April 21st from 4:30 to 6 for a reception in celebration of our current art exhibit, Creative Quarantine, artworks from Al-Bustan's after-school Arab arts program. I wish you the best. Thank you for joining us. Salam, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.